Welcome to the Teachers Playlist podcast. I'm Jen Morose. I'm your host. I'm so excited today to be sharing this maiden voyage with the illustrious Adrienne Gear. My my big question is, and I put this to excellent educators, what's your greatest hit? So, just a quick introduction for Adrienne Gear. She's an elementary school teacher with the Vancouver School District with 25 years of experience, passionate about literacy learning and inspiring teachers to reflect and refine their practice. She's presented internationally. Her workshops are in very high demand: Canada, US, UK, Australia, Sweden. But that's not why I'm interviewing Adrienne. It's because early on, I think it was 2010, I met Adrienne in School District 57, Bulkley Valley, and she inspired me to look at Pro D differently. What is tangible and concrete about the message we're bringing? And how do we ensure that teachers are able to implement these concepts and ideas in a way that's supported over a series, literally a series of time? Now, this was, like you were saying, Adrienne, almost 20 years ago. And Adrienne was invited to our school district, and it changed my practice because Adrienne was coming into the school district in a series of 6 or 7 sessions to ensure side-by-side implementation and concrete and tangible practice. So I've been a fan and gobsmacked ever since. So, you know what, Adrienne, you don't need a lot of introduction at all. And I know so many people are excited to hear from you. I want to know what your greatest hit is and what the best access point is to share that with teachers wanting to try something excellent on Monday. But what we're going to do is we're going to just start at the start. Adrienne, could you just briefly describe your educational background and how long have you been teaching? Where have you taught? And what are your favorite grade levels?
Well, thank you, Jennifer. It's really great to be connected with you again. I mean, we've stayed connected since then. We've sort of found our little bond. But it's great to be able to be part of your podcast. So thank you for inviting me and for letting me speak
My
with
pleasure.
you. So early days, I went to University of British Columbia in Vancouver, where I grew up, and I started my teaching career actually in Japan because when I graduated from UBC in with a teacher
Yeah.
education degree, there were no teaching jobs, zero in BC. Like all the people that I graduated with had to go either change their profession or go outside of the lower mainland. So I had a friend that went to Chase, I had a friend that went to Trail, and I ended up getting a job at a private girls' school in Tokyo. And I lived there for actually was going to go for 1 year, but I ended up staying for 3 and worked in the school and traveled all around. And I had an amazing experience. And then I came back to Vancouver, and my first teaching position in SD 39 was this was when the new sort of ESL classes were coming into play,
Okay.
and
Yes.
the early language learners were not integrated into classrooms. They were put into, so I had a grade 4 to 7
Oh,
class,
yeah. Hmm.
all ELL students. So that was my first position. And then I did that for 2 or 3 years. And then I moved into uh, regular classroom practice. And then, I've been in several different schools, but I think the main teaching level that I probably had the most experience with was anywhere from grade 2 up to grade 3, 4. I had a grade 5 class. I've been teaching a long time. So I've been in classrooms for lots of different grade levels.
I love that you started in Japan.
I know,
Who
you
knows
probably
that?
didn't know that. Yeah,
I
no,
feel like,
it was such an amazing, I mean, I traveled like it was, and I was
Yeah.
so young. And then my girlfriend came and we went all, we just, it was an amazing, amazing experience. I was very young. And I look back on it and think, wow, what an opportunity, to be doing that. But then in Vancouver, I started doing sort of mentoring. I started to work in the district as a literacy support teacher. And in that role, as you know, you get to have the gamut of going into lots of different schools, lots of different classrooms. And I loved that. I found it, just to be such a rewarding opportunity to kind of connect not only with teachers, but with lots of students. And then my workshops started kind of picking up, and
Right.
then it kind of went from there. And you and I have talked about this, is trying to find
Yeah.
that balance
Yeah.
between staying grounded in classroom practice, staying grounded in a school and with children, but then at the other side of it, wanting to share that with other people. So trying to navigate that journey between being grounded in classroom and then being able to have the time to share, because it gets very busy.
So really, the Adrienne Gear reading power, I suppose. I remember
Early
the
days.
poster, the early days where you were, gaining tons of momentum already in the early days. But so that was developed really then, do you think, primarily through your work as a literacy support teacher then? Um,
Well,
and
no.
classroom or
Yeah, so that came out of really, really grounded practice. It's
right.
funny because I was, I'm in the middle of editing my new book, and there's a section where I talk about how reading power started, and it just takes me back. So it was at a school where I was teaching full time, and we were working on the Vancouver School Board had just sort of implemented reading assessments. So it was
Right.
across the district. Everyone was doing the same. We all had this box of glossy cards, and we had to,
Oh, yes.
yeah, you remember, and we were
Yeah.
all doing it. And we had done the first round of this assessment,
Okay.
and then we had this big meeting with the principal, and
Oh,
he was a great principal. I really, really loved him. And he had made all these a slide deck for the staff meeting showing the scores of our school's reading assessment. And all these graphs, and we're all sitting there. And basically the end of the end of the meeting was our scores were strong in code
right.
and very, very low in comprehension.
Whoa.
And so this was a big problem and a big concern of his, and we need to
Yeah.
work on something that's going to make a difference. What are we going to do?
Wow. What year was this, Adrienne, again?
That would have been 2000, like maybe 2004 or
Okay,
2000.
and
Yeah.
that's what I remember hearing too, that was a
So
common issue.
it
Yeah.
was a common issue because a
Yeah.
lot of the primary teachers were using,
Yeah.
the plaid phonics, the
Yeah.
phonics
Oh, yeah.
workbooks. And I was teaching grade 4 or 5 at the time. And like many intermediate teachers,
Yes.
we had this idea that when the kids walked into our room,
Right.
they already knew how to
How to
read.
read. Yeah.
They knew how to read. So it was not our job. Our
No.
job was to to do not lit circles weren't there, but like class
It's
novels. And it
yeah.
wasn't that we weren't doing reading, but we weren't teaching reading.
No.
And like I didn't know the difference at that point, but I just thought it wasn't my job. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
So that's how the Adrienne Gear brand was born,
Well, no,
essentially through
so the end of the story is this. The principal at that meeting said we
yeah.
need to dedicate the next few years.
Okay.
Our goal is going to be we need to improve comprehension.
Okay.
This assessment has clearly illustrated that we have a problem. What are we going to do about it? And then he said we need to form a comprehension committee. Who would like to be on the comprehension committee? Well, of course, when any principal says who would like to be on the committee, everyone sort of looks in their bag and
Yeah.
pretends that they're busy. We didn't have phones then, 'cause that's how old we were, but old I am. But it was like no one put their hand up. But I put my hand up because
Yeah.
I thought I was doing my master's at the time, and I thought
Right.
this would be kind of a really interesting thing
Perfect.
to do. I'll be on the committee. I'll be on the committee. I said,
Right.
no one
Not,
else put
yes.
their hand up.
So you
No
turned
one else put,
into the committee.
I
Yeah.
was the committee. I was the comprehension committee. And so
Of course you were.
but that was where reading power started, really.
Okay. That's
That was
sweet.
the root of it. I mean, it's kind of the story that I always tell, but if it hadn't been for those assessments, if it hadn't been for that principle,
Yeah.
like you kind of look
Yeah.
back on it, it was because our school needed to make some changes. And I'm all in. Like I'll look at that. And that's how it started. So I brought in, that was when, and so we were talking, you were saying like before, what's your kind of your best hit or your greatest
Greatest
hit?
hits. So like, yes, on the front of the album, of Adrienne's album,
So on the front of my
featuring.
album, well, on the front of my album, as you know, would be a shelf of picture books.
Of course it would be.
So that's one of I would say, like, we hadn't really talked about this, but as I'm talking, I thought, that is, I think, one of my greatest hits is my passion for those books and how I feel like that's something that I've been able to do over the years, is just talk about how valuable a piece of children's literature is in terms of teaching practice. Like, those books are my teaching partners. A picture book is my teaching partner, and I won't feel comfortable doing a literacy lesson, starting a literacy lesson without a picture book in my hand.
Okay.
So on my cover, there's going to be a picture book. But my other hit, I would say, is being able to take research that's
Yes.
out there in the research world. And I am not a researcher. I don't do the research, but
No.
I'm interested in the research, and I'm interested in taking that research and maybe trying to put it into practical terms, putting
Yes.
it into a format that is grounded in the research, but is user friendly. And so that's, I think, when, because you had asked me that question when we were planning this, and I thought, I've got lots of lessons that I could talk about, but I think, in the big picture,
Yes.
that seems to be what I've done that I think is maybe helpful. Putting it into simple. But simple doesn't mean that it's not, that it's not important, and it's not deep thinking, and it's not, grounded.
No.
Uh, but it's just making it user friendly. And again, I'm going to go back to, sorry, I'm jumping through all the questions, but going back to that principle,
Yes.
so I become the comprehension committee for my school. And at the same time as that, I'm taking my master's. And in my master's course at UBC, I
Right.
learn about David Pearson.
Okay. And so this is where I wanted to loop back to. So you've done this absolutely beautifully. So essentially, just for our listeners and for the folks out there, the hit could be a practice concept strategy, like anything that you're the most proud of, given its impact on students. Students being your students in front of you, or the student, the teachers in front of you, publication, composition, anything. Now, Adrienne, you've got 8 publications. I mean, that are
And
that are
I'm working on 9.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
I
And
know.
by the way, stay tuned, because there might be something very special attached to the
Oh,
ninth
yeah. Oh,
publication.
yeah.
And I've had that comment from authors. Well, I can't choose, a favorite publication. It's like choosing a favorite child. We just don't do that. But you know what I love about what Adrienne does? as per usual, is she brings it back to the concrete and the tangible, and it's all about application and implementation. And I think you said this to me once, Adrienne, if it's not practical and tangible enough to drop into your classroom and start on Monday or the next day, really, with something that you can do, then it's not really that worthwhile for teachers. And I think you've dedicated a career to this,
Mhm.
and that's why we remember you, is because everything you do is research based, but it's implemented well in the classroom, and you do it yourself in the classroom. You're a practitioner. So your greatest hit then is, as you say, taking research and packaging it and showing teachers how to implement that research practice into the classroom. Would you say that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Now it's interesting that you just said something that I just wanted to come back to, which is that idea that if it's not something that I can take and use in my classroom tomorrow, there's not much point. But there's a little bit of a danger there in that there is so much now out
Yes.
there
Yes.
that I would call the grab and goes, right?
Yes.
And TPT and
I know.
Pinterest and all those places that are overflowing with the
Stuff.
one-stop shop where you just, okay, I need something for tomorrow. It's
Yeah.
a grab and go, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but you could literally fill your whole school year, your
Yes.
every literacy lesson, every lesson that you could ever want, and you could be cherry picking
True.
the single one-off lessons that will fill the space. But so then what I feel like I have tried to do is, because I'm looking at the big picture, because I'm looking at long-term, sort of like, what is your goal as a reading teacher? What is your goal as a writing teacher? Like, we have to have that
Framework.
overriding frame and
Yes.
grounded in research.
Yes.
And then you can use those, if you want to use the grab and go lessons from my book or from wherever you're sourcing, as long as what you're using is accessing what's important and
Absolutely.
and grounded in that big picture, because I think that's what I'm seeing as a, like, it's a concern of mine that there's just so much stuff
It's a bit
and we want.
disjointed, really. It can be
Yeah.
very disjointed. And what I love about your work, and I know, like, your name comes up and everyone is equally, impressed, um, that you develop programs, essentially. So it's not just,
A
here's this,
lesson.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, here's these, sort of, like you say, one-stop shops. It is one-stop shop in a sense, but it's a program, and it's a very thoughtful implemented program, um, and something that, I think you create as being practical and tangible. And actually, as somebody who lives in the world of concrete and tangible, that's where I live. I live in frameworks. I have to see it,
Yeah.
and I have to be
Yes.
able to conceptualize it with a framework in
Hmm.
black and white. I need it.
Hmm.
You have developed those, with also the breadth of research and the depth, breadth and depth
Yeah.
of research and meaning. And that's why, I think that is your greatest hit. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I'd let you pick whatever greatest hit you wanted, but that should be on the front of your album. And yes, we'll
Yeah.
picture some pictures of picture books too.
Picture
Yes.
books
Okay.
around it,
Whatever. Okay.
yes, because those are sort of the
True.
practical ways in, but
Yes.
I do think that that's, and again, I'm doing this new book, and I've had to do a lot of not doing the research, but
No.
reading the research
Yes.
on what's now, what are now sort of the talk of comprehension and
Would I be
reading.
able to kind of sneak in a little bit on this? We didn't discuss this, and that's okay. But in that, do you have you've obviously read a lot of research about comprehension. Could you mention a couple of names of researchers that you enjoy reading or that you find compelling?
Well, Nell Duke is always my go-to,
Okay.
and I'm looking still at, I mean, David Pearson's still around, and I'm looking at
Yep. I've
a
seen
lot
his name.
of
Yep.
his work. But yeah, there you'll have to wait and wait for my book. Because
Okay.
there are a few, and especially when it comes to that idea of, how do we teach comprehension? Because comprehension, when David Pearson's research first came out, it really was looking at the isolation of the
Right.
strategies. And
Yes.
now there's a lot of conversation and research into that's not necessarily the route to go. We don't want to isolate, connecting and questioning and visualizing and separating them,
Sure.
because in reality, it is all about application of all the thinking that happens. And so,
Right. And the
so it's just,
selection of those applications. Yeah.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just the movement of different but it's so funny because I have been so grounded in reading power strategies, and then I read something that says you're doing it wrong, right? Like not you're doing it wrong, but that's how
No,
I take it. It's like,
no, but that's
you shouldn't be isolating the
right.
strategy, you should be putting them together, and then, or you shouldn't be teaching kids to look at pictures when they're reading, because that's like help, like all
I
that
know.
you're doing it wrong. That whole thing is like, am I? Am I doing it wrong? Or what it's
Yes,
interesting how when this all new research comes out that's questioning, that's why education continues to change and transform and
I
to
agree.
grow, right? But it's always those moments where you think, have I been doing it wrong? Like, have I been doing it wrong? Have I been saying the wrong thing? And I don't think there's anything, it's not about being wrong. It's about learning, and it's about moving in the next, like, what's the next chapter? But okay, here's my analogy of, I'm going to just throw this in because
Please
it's in
do.
my book.
Oh,
So
good. Okay.
this is the do not isolate reading strategies
Okay.
for teaching comprehension.
Okay.
That's the talk now. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And so I have to think to myself, okay, what do I need to do differently? How do
Right.
I need to take that, and that's research based, and make it work?
Right.
But at the same time, I have analogies for everything. Here's my analogy. I understand that comprehension needs to be holistic. You need to be putting all those strategies into play. But if you're a swimming teacher and you have a group of beginning swimmers who've never ever been in a pool before,
Right.
you are not going to take them down to the deep end and
Right.
say, okay, boys and girls, jump in and good luck getting to the other end. No swimming
No.
teacher would ever do that,
No.
right? So there's my thought about, okay, you've got a group of children, maybe in kindergarten, grade 1 or grade 2. They've never put those strategies into play. Why would I expect that they're going to open a book and dive in? They're not going to.
No.
Swimming lessons is all tiny little skills.
It's skill sets. Yeah. It's
And
discrete
then
skill sets that are
you have
necessary.
to separate them,
You
and
do.
then you put them together and take them to the deep end.
Absolutely.
So I'm all about, and then the whole thing with code or comprehension, it's not one
Right.
or the
It
other,
isn't. No.
it's both.
It's a form of choreography, essentially.
I
And
love that. It
thank you.
is. That's great. It is. It's
It
choreographing.
it is.
And
But yeah,
I love that word better. So I always use the word navigate, but navigating is almost like, in visualizing navigating is like you're separating, but you just put it so beautifully. It's
yeah,
like that's more like bringing it together.
it is. And in my work simply put, with unpacking learning standards, we always look at what are the, depth of knowledge one, or what's the knowledge acquisition necessary for application, which is the standard level
Yeah,
that we're looking at. And so it is choreography. We need discrete skill sets and we need direct instruction.
yeah.
And that is just the case. And so I think what educators appreciate about you, and I'm speaking for myself as well, is that everything for you is very thoughtful and refined. You refine and you're constantly thinking and revisiting, and I love that. I really do. It's admirable, it's courageous, and but also just very well received across the board. And what I'm excited about, so excited, seeing that this is my first podcast and I got to share it with you, my edu hero, is that you have a little something special to offer as a tangible, of course, and concrete
Hmm.
representation of your access point to your greatest hit, because we can't all be Adrienne Gear, but there are access points. And so, what could you talk a little bit about what you might share in
Yes.
the
So
video
what?
description? I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
So what I'm sharing is a lesson that I have come over the last years since I kind of developed it, seen it being used so often and so successfully, and it's simple. That's always my thing. It's got to be simple, but it's grounded in really good practice. So it's called the one word activity. And the lesson is basically taking a picture book, for example, a fiction book on bullying, or I usually use books that have issues that I might want to be talking about. But before reading the book to the children, you focus on the single word connected to the theme. You can also
Beautiful.
use this, you can also use the lesson for a nonfiction topic. So, I just was working on one for my book with a beautiful book by Melissa Stewart, who's sort of my nonfiction writing hero. And it's called Whale Fall. And so the book is about what happens when a whale dies. This is not to do with like the killing whales or anything like that. It's just when a whale
Right.
naturally passes away, their carcass drops to it's called the whale fall, and it drops to the
Oh,
bottom of the ocean floor.
okay.
And that carcass
Yes.
creates an ecosystem down at the bottom of the ocean floor. The what happens to that whale after it dies supports and like it is the one of the most fascinating
What?
books
This is
I've
amazing.
read in a long. It's so good. It's called The Whale Fall.
Okay, I'll
Anyway,
put that in the
so
video description. Absolutely, folks.
so for example, if I was using that book in my
Yes.
classroom
Yeah,
before I showed the book or read the book,
right.
we would have one word on the chart stand, whale, the
Okay,
word whale. Okay,
right.
so kids don't know anything about the book. They don't know about anything to do with what it's about, but we're focusing on whale. And what we do is we spend some time thinking and talking about the word. So what connections do you have? What visual images do you see when you see the word whale? What facts do you know? Anything. So we brainstorm. It's like background knowledge, but we
Absolutely.
brainstorm not just facts we know, but connections and
Right.
visuals and questions.
Oh, and so you're really bringing that all together then.
Bringing it all together, we're putting
That's
all of that into
beautiful.
play. And then
Beautiful.
we make a word web.
Okay.
We we make a word web around the word whale with all of their responses. Then you read the book. Now, what happens when you read the book is our thinking about whales, even when I was describing the book to you, your
Right.
thinking about
I
whales
was.
has stretched. Our thinking stretches.
Blows my mind.
And
Yeah.
I know that book literally blew my mind when I read it because
Yeah.
I didn't know any of it.
Neither do.
So but
Where do whales
again,
go?
going back
Like,
to my other greatest hit,
okay.
the books, the
Yes.
books.
Yes.
The books that
Okay.
bring the
Yes.
richness into your classroom. And that's why I can't do a lesson without one. Anyways,
No.
you read the book, then let's talk again about our
Okay.
thinking. How is our thinking stretched? And then what the teacher does is with a different color felt pen,
Okay.
stretches the word web outward
Yes.
so that visibly the kids can see this was our original thought,
Right.
but now this is visibly how our thinking has stretched
Wow.
because of this book. And so that one word activity is something that I use really to illustrate that reading and learning, it's all about growing. We grow, our thinking grows and stretches and unfolds because of something that we're reading about or learning about.
So it's an absolute grab and go. There's no question on that, but it's rooted in excellent practice and it has multiple applications to your
You can do it
entire.
with a unit. You can do
Oh,
it with like I saw a class just before their Terry Fox run.
yes,
She put Terry Fox as the one word. And they what do you already know and feel and think about Terry Fox? And then she read some books and saw the video and then did the run and then the thinking stretch. So yeah, you can use it for everything. It's just
unbelievable.
illustrating to children how thinking is never stagnant. It never stays in one spot.
And
It's
I,
always growing.
yeah, and I love the fact that it's also leveraging multiple reading strategies at the same time, or sorry,
Yes.
comprehension strategies
Yes.
at the same
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
in again in a tangible and and simple way. It's applicable, readily
Yeah.
applicable, and I
And
love
and
that.
and that's why I'm a big, big promoter of read alouds because yes, we're teaching phonics and phonemic awareness
Yep,
and U-Fly and all of those things, all those
you bet.
programs that help kids with the code,
Yep,
but they also need to practice the thinking piece.
yes,
So I always say to kids when I'm just about to do a read aloud, I'm going to do the book reading.
right.
I want you to do brain reading. I want you to
Beautiful.
think about the book.
Love
And we
it.
need to balance that out.
We
Like
do.
they need practice and they're not reading, they're not decoding in that lesson, but they're definitely thinking.
Well, and this is beautifully aligned with the BC curriculum,
Yeah.
with our thinking strategies and with sharing our thinking. So it's timely in multiple ways, as always, and always rooted in research and in your thoughtful um, application. And that's something that is such a gift to so many educators. And I actually just wanted to kind of, exit a little bit with just a thank you to you because anytime I've reached out, you're available and you're like this, international. You're the what was that? The one person committee, the
Oh yeah,
comprehension committee. Sorry, I
the
didn't know that about
comprehension
you.
committee.
And actually that's hilarious because you are a committee. So that's that you kind of are. But you're available. And if you're not, immediately available, you get back to me and you treat people with respect and with kindness and you help people believe in themselves and their own ability. And I think that to me is a nuance that's just so important because it's very easy to feel that you're not enough or that you have to try and try and try. And I remember even from those early days, Adrienne, you treated people so well and they felt
Aw,
excited to learn because you made them feel like they could do it and they were superstars. That's a gift.
aw, thank you.
So I just want you to know that and
Well,
gratitude.
teaching is teaching is hard.
It
Like
is.
it is a very hard profession and people work so hard
We do.
and I don't, I want them to feel like they're doing their best and they're making it work. And if this little lesson can help you on your way, great. But it is not an easy, it's not an easy job to be a good teacher, right? But kids need us. They need us. And we're giving them we can give them a huge, huge gift in like what you've just said about what you feel from me. That's what we can give kids. Kids need to feel like they're successful. They need to
Yep.
feel that they're, you know, making a difference and that they can, that they're seen and all of those things. So I always think if I can do that for a teacher, then that teacher's then going to share that gift with 25 other kids,
It
right? So
absolutely is passed on.
that kind
Yeah,
of
the
path.
ripple effect is amazing. And I just want to thank you again for sharing
Thank
your time with
you.
me. In the video description, folks, you will see a link to Adrienne's free share. The name again is the
The
one-stop
one word activity.
one-word activity, and it is free, and it is a sort of a lead into her upcoming publication, which is called
Powerful thinking.
Powerful Thinking.
Mhm.
And it will be as popular as all the other publications, I know, and we're really excited about it. And folks, if you have any comments or questions for Adrienne, is that okay if we drop them
Yeah.
in the video comments?
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Adrienne. Again, thanks for tuning in, folks, for Adrienne Gear's greatest hit. You'll see it in the video description, a free share, and a picture showing what her greatest hit is. Application of research, which is so wonderful, and we're so grateful for you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
And I
much,
just
Adrienne.
thank you and just Jennifer, thank you for all the work that you're doing for educators as well.
Aw.
You are making a big difference in the lives of many, many. You're simplifying things and making it clear. So I appreciate it. Sorry, you said this was going to be 20 minutes. And when I get talking, it's like,
Well, here, no, and that's great. And you know what? That this is perfect. This is a perfect maiden voyage to be with somebody who is such a wonderful educator and so
oh,
kind.
thank you.
We had a couple of sound issues, but I think we
Yeah, we
figured it out.
worked it through.
I've worked I've worked it out. So it's interesting looping back with you, Adrienne,
Yeah,
and best of luck with everything that you do.
thank
And
you.
please keep in touch and leave your comments for Adrienne. And if you have any comments about this podcast, genmo.org. It's open to you to email and contact me with your assessment needs. So
Thanks.
thank you, folks. You have a wonderful day. Thanks, Adrienne.
Thank
And
you.
have a wonderful weekend, folks. Thanks for
Yeah.
tuning
Stay
in to the
warm.
Teachers
We're in the
Playlist
cold.
at minus
Okay.
33. Thanks. Take
Thanks.
care. Bye bye.
Okay.